Right, this video is dedicated to Twiggy and Wayne and all of those friends of mine that watch these videos, and even an ex-Ryder Cup player, at least one. Now, I really hope this video inspires you guys, because it's something I've been wanting to do for a long time. Now, I wouldn't call myself a golf coach, not anymore, but I would call myself a professional golf researcher, something that I've been doing, well, for at least 15 years now, I'd say, because, well, having come to a new understanding, I saw that there was a really great opportunity for me. And, well, I would say after 15 years, despite the fact I think I've been on a good pathway all the time, but I think I'm coming very close to that point where I'm starting to invent a whole new approach to the game of golf, which I would say is infinitely more effective and vastly, well, much more simple. But it, of course, like everything, it does take a bit of explaining, and it will take a bit of curiosity. Anyway, I'm going to hit a shot, and you can tell me if you see anything that's strange, anything you don't like or whatever. Hopefully it looks pretty much normal. Well, I can tell you, I certainly couldn't have hit a better shot there, and it really is starting to feel incredibly easy. But this video is all about how, well, to give you that opportunity and how to really inspire you, potentially, you guys that are tuned into this channel and all my friends. Now, I don't know how many of you would be prepared to even do this, but it's certainly something that I've had to face. And the latter stages of my life, I've realized that actually everything that I knew, everything that I've ever learned, and everything that I've been taught was completely wrong, totally wrong. And when I mean wrong, I mean 90 to 100% wrong. Yes, maybe uncomfortable truth to face, but that's the point that I came to. But actually realizing this was where all these incredible opportunities will come. Now, as my life has pretty much consisted of golf, some very poor health, and women, all those areas, as you'll see, I've been completely wrong all my life. Right, first, when it comes to health, I'm going to start with this. Now, all of you that have tuned in for potentially a golf video, you're going to say, I don't really want to know anything about health. But as you'll see, it's actually very relevant. And I'm going to do my best to describe why I think that I've been completely wrong. Now, obviously, on the surface, or as we see it, and as I saw it all my life, everything makes perfect sense. In the fact that we're obviously born and we do our best to remain healthy with eating reasonably healthy food and exercising and doing all those things. Some of us do better than others. But what happens is, despite all these things, and maybe even looking after ourselves, some of us become sick. And when we become sick, of course, we have a medical system that's going to help us out. And we have doctors and surgeons, and it could be drugs, or it could be an operation, it could be whatever. And they're going to put things right for us. And in fact, what's happened is the average age that we live to now has gone up. So how can this possibly be wrong? Well, this is the thing, because, and it does take, I'm going to try and describe it the best I can in a short period of time, but it is, as I see it now, completely and utterly wrong, and I'm going in a totally different direction altogether. Now, I would say the first thing to realize is what we thought was a healthy diet potentially isn't, as you'll see. And in fact, 60 years ago, there was a man called Ancel Keys. All this is, you can do your own research, find out yourself. There was a guy called Ancel Keys who was paid to change the narrative. He was literally paid, bribed, if you like, by the sugar industry, the drug industry, to literally manipulate facts and data in their favor, because obviously the sugar industry and the drug industry wanted to sell their drugs, and they wanted to keep us eating sugar, and they don't want us healthy. Yes, I know, frightening facts, but well, it is true. So what he did is he manipulated these facts, and he came up with the thing that we had to start eating low fat and reduce our cholesterol. So we started out on this diet where we thought, where we had to eat low fat, low margarine, cereals, all these things. It said low fat, and that was cholesterol and high fat diet. Red meat was the thing that was leading us into heart attacks, strokes, and even cancer. So he changed that narrative, but it was manipulated facts and it wasn't true. So then I started to understand, you know, if you were a lion, for example, you wouldn't say, well, I want to be a vegetarian, because if a lion changed his diet and started to eat vegetables, he would become very ill, just as we're doing presently at this moment in time. And what you realize is that every single animal on the planet has to eat a species appropriate diet. And it's something that humans haven't done, potentially, certainly for 60 years since Ancel Keys changed this narrative, but potentially for hundreds of years, and maybe even never. That's as I've understood it now. And we're certainly completely wrong about what we think is the right idea to eat healthy. We've got it totally wrong. And the more I've looked into it, but then you need to understand, well, what happens if you eat a species appropriate diet? And we start to give this ecosystem that we call the body all the right nutrients, and we start to take away the poisons that we're often subjected to. Now, what happens there, as I've learned, is that this body ecosystem is able and is designed to completely heal itself. And in fact, it heals itself so well and protects itself against all kinds of diseases as well. But it heals itself so well that even some diseases and illnesses that doctors say are incurable are actually curable. So you start to see a pattern that in reality, even though it makes perfect sense for us that we've got sick and we've got drugs and all this, and we've been told that's the scientific way, in reality, what we should have been doing all this time, and it would have happened if a certain gentleman named Rockefeller hadn't changed the narrative back in the early 1900s as well, we would have been going in a completely different direction. And we would have actually had no drugs, but learning how, or potentially very little drugs, I should say, but learning how to get this ecosystem that we call the body as healthy as we possibly could, so that we never got the illnesses. And even if we did, we are able to cure ourselves by literally making our body even healthier. But we've never gone in that direction. And in fact, we've even been, by manipulated facts, steered away from that direction. So makes you start to think that if we look at things in a very different perspective, the whole picture changes. And that's the important thing here. So I don't know if this is making you angry that you've potentially been lied to. Facts and data and all this have been manipulated to suit agendas. But now let's talk about this when it comes to golf. How can it be possible that this has happened in the golfing industry? Well, I can tell you one thing, it's probably not nearly as bad as it is in the medical industry, and it's certainly not life-threatening. However, I do believe that we have got things really quite significantly wrong. If not totally, as you'll see, we certainly have. Well, we've created a system that really doesn't work, in my opinion. In fact, it's kind of upside down. As I said, it doesn't really make sense when we've got so many great players that seem to succeed through the system we have. But whatever system we had, there's always going to be some successes. It wouldn't matter what it was. Right, so let's try and explain this as quickly as I possibly can. Now, I think the first thing to say is that I think the idea that we've had pretty much since golf first began is that we're trying to learn one swing, one stance, one grip, one ball position or whatever, this machine-like thing that we're trying to repeat time and time again. And I think that is completely ridiculous. It isn't, it's simply not true. It makes sense in many ways, and a lot of the great players look to be doing that. But in reality, we're making multiple swings because we have bad lies, side slopes with different winds, different clubs, three-quarter shots. I mean, there is just we're tense one day, we've got a stiff back one day, all kinds of things. It makes sense from from some ways, but reality is that we're making multiple swings all the time. It kind of looks like we're making the same swing, and in potentially it almost feels like we're making the same swing, but we're not. I mean, if you watch Rory McIlroy or a top player, yes, they seem to be quite machine-like, but it's very much like, yes, it looks like his swing all the time, but if I was to change my facial expression, you'd still see it was me, just as I would recognise you. It seems it's just something that's recognisable about Rory McIlroy, but in reality, he's making lots of different reactions that he almost doesn't know about. So I think that's the first thing. The second thing is and this was probably more major that I started to understand things, was that the golf swing is actually a product that's way far down the line. And it's a product of, I mean, the simple way to describe it, it's a product of intention. In other words, if I was playing tennis and somebody said topspin, hit a topspin, Richard, I would naturally move my racket kind of in that direction. I certainly would never do that. Oh, I'll hit a topspin, because I know that's slice spin. So in other words, just the intention itself, which we're changing intentions all the time, is going to have a result on the golf swing. Plus we have setup that's going to be massive, decides so much about the way we swing it. And of course, that's something that, well, that we need to look in a little further, a little deeper, as I've understood it, and in potentially in a different way. And then, of course, we have tension and how much we've practiced, all kinds of things. There's so many variables that are going to decide our swing. Bad lies, you know, if the ground is tight and muddy or something, we tense up and we make some horrible looking golf swings. All kinds of things. Under pressure, when we're not in our comfort zone, there's thousands of things that are going to decide our swing. And yet we've got a system and a way of thinking where we make these kind of arrogant, judgmental decisions. Oh, you did this, you didn't turn, you did this, and you moved ahead of it and whatever. It actually makes no sense. We should never be talking about the golf swing. And in fact, as I've learned things, we stop working on the golf swing because of the fact it's a product way further down the line. And I think the third bit that's never made any sense is this idea that when we stand to the ball, when we start to learn the game, it's this very much machine-like thing that it's very critical where we line our body and where the club face must be pointing dead square, and our shoulders are perfectly in line or whatever, and my right arm should be. We learn this sort of very regimented, we must have a neutral grip. All these things never made any sense at all, in my opinion, because if we were going to play any other sport, especially do anything similar, the last thing we would do, like skim a stone or play racquetball or squash or something, the last thing we do is, oh, must be square, do this. We just don't work that way. Human beings don't work that way. Machines do. So that's the last thing I would say that we've kind of got wrong. Now, once we understand how we've got things completely wrong, we've gone about things in totally the wrong manner. Sorry, I should have added that when we talk about this with the stance, because we're given these set of principles with the stance, and when it all goes wrong, which often it does, and for very few it doesn't, then we're straight into working on the golf swing. Oh, I came over the top, I did this, I did all, yeah, I've got to drop it, I've got to shallow it out, I've got to lag more, oh, I moved ahead of it too quick, anything you like. We've got all this sort of, this huge industry of teaching all this complete and utter nonsense, which it is. So that's, once I came to that understanding, I realized I had this huge opportunity. Now, I've spent 15 years trying to find a way that we can potentially learn the game in a far simpler way. And like I said, I'm right on the edge of doing it. And I think I'm probably there. I might need just a little bit more time to just tidy up a few little things, but I'll be trying to share that in the very next video. But the real opportunity comes once we've understood, as I've done in my health, as I've done in golf, the real opportunity comes once we understand that we've been going in the wrong direction altogether all our lives, the whole of our lives, and we've potentially got to change our mind completely. Now, the last thing, of course, was women. That's been part of my life. And yes, I've made the same mistakes there. And eventually, I learned to change my mind and look at things in a very different way. And of course, I was meeting the wrong people and I went through some broken relationships. Yes, I'm not blaming anybody else. I'm only blaming myself. But of course, I really didn't understand things very well there. And I had to change my mind there too. So are you prepared? Because as I've learned things, waking up, learning all kinds of new things is been an incredible opportunity for me as I've starting to repair my health to levels that I didn't even think I could do. And I'm defying all the odds in golf, which has been very much my goal. I realized that I've got an opportunity because everybody else is thinking about this in the wrong way. Now, I'm going to try and show you how to think about things in the right way, where you really can play golf effectively, potentially even become healthy. And once you really, and this is something where you're going to probably have to get a bit curious about, once you kind of understand this business about how to deliver the club head more efficiently and things, all these things, once you understand about it, you won't lose your temper in the same way, or you won't get frustrated in the same way as you do, and you find your form won't go up and down in the most horrendous way that it's done, because you'll start to understand exactly what the journey is and exactly what's gone wrong when you get those bad shots and those bad moments. So golf becomes a far less frustrating game too. So that's it. Thanks for listening, and hopefully I've inspired you guys in some kind of way. And well, I don't know, will you be prepared to change your mind? Who knows?